Friday, the end of the workday and the work week. William was heading home. The weather forecast for Saturday and Sunday promised excellent late summer days. It was still warm outside, and finally the long construction and renovation saga of his country house was over. His wife had no idea what he had been working on all year. She absolutely hated any work related to land and hadn't set foot in his parents' house for the entire year. The house was practically torn down and rebuilt. A garage was added, and now it had all modern conveniences, making it fully livable. It took his relentless effort and, of course, money. Money his wife also knew nothing about. Passing by a shopping center, William resolutely walked inside and picked up a bottle of good cognac, 3 types of hard cheese, olives, a piece of salted salmon, a loaf of baguette for canapes, and cheerfully headed home in high spirits. Entering the living room, he found his wife lounging in her exquisite robe. "Let's talk," she said. "I don't understand something. Lately our feelings have started to fade, and they need a boost. I discussed this with Amanda, and Nicholas gave us an idea. He suggested going on a date with another man for comparison. So tonight, Amanda and I are meeting Nicholas and his friend at a restaurant in a hotel, where we will also spend the night." "Wait, I don't understand. You talked to Amanda, but Nicholas gave the advice? Who is Nicholas, and where did he come from?" "Nicholas is our new co-worker. Amanda, Nicholas, and I share an office." "So, have you already had something with Nicholas?" "No, what are you imagining? I haven't done anything with him, and with his friend I haven't even met him yet. And you're just informing me that you're going on a date. Of course, I believe that after so many years together, you won't be jealous. This little adventure will spice up our life. It will for Amanda, too." "Interesting idea. What time is your date?" "In an hour, so I still have some time." "Understood." William walked into the bedroom, took out a suitcase, and began packing his things, listening to his wife hum a tune while trying on a skirt. He carried the suitcase to the living room and started packing some items that were there. Meanwhile, he asked, "Do you think winter will be cold?" "Probably not. Global warming and all." "Then my jacket should be enough. It's warm and barely worn for a season." "What are you doing?" "Packing my things." "Why?" "As far as I remember, this apartment belongs to you. So in the event of a divorce, it won't be divided. I'll transfer half the value of the car to you. You don't drive anyway and don't even have a license. Our joint account I won't touch, but I know exactly how much is in there. After the divorce, we'll split it in half. However, I will stop transferring money into it. I'll support the kids as much as necessary. It's good they're already grown, and I'll inform them myself about our separation." "William, what are you saying? Are you leaving me? I just wanted to add some variety to our life." "Valerie, do you seriously think that after you go on a date with another man, our life together will still be possible? What are you even thinking?" "William, this is called an open marriage. Let's sit down and talk about it." "I have 10 minutes. 10 minutes until what?" "Until I leave. Say what you need to say." "I've already packed my essentials. I'm leaving you the computer, but I'm taking my laptop." "You can't do this to me. We've been together for so many years. We have grown children." "Thank God the kids are grown, so no alimony. And why can you do this to me, but I can't to you? Don't you understand the new trends?" "What trends?" "Nicholas and his friend just wanted to spend a couple of nights with someone else's wives. What does his wife think about this?" "He told her he was going on a business trip. And why didn't he tell her about these new trends? And that he picked up 2 old fools who think cheating on their husbands is exciting? And why are you telling me you're spending the night with another man? But he's lying to his wife. He says his wife is old-fashioned and doesn't understand much. And what did Amanda tell her husband? The same thing I told you. So she has as much common sense as you do. William, you must not leave. Let's discuss this. After lunch, I'll file for divorce. See you in court." William closed the suitcase, walked to the hallway, and started putting on his coat. Once dressed, he said, "You know, I'm not picky. I have everything I need. Maybe I forgot something in the rush, but I don't need it anymore." He took his belongings and headed for the door, picking up the bag of cognac and snacks he had left in the hallway when he arrived home. Behind him, Valerie sobbed, shouting, "William, stay!" I won't go anywhere. I understand everything. Forgive me, you fool. The phone rang. Valerie, still crying, answered. Hello. Valerie, it's Amanda. Valerie, my husband beat me up. I'm not going, and I have nowhere to stay overnight. I'm not going to the restaurant either. My husband left me. William is gone. Then I'll stay at your place. Come over. I'm almost there. I have nowhere else to go. A little later, Amanda arrived at the apartment. Her face was decorated with a huge bruise, and she carried 2 suitcases from her car. Meanwhile, William called Amanda's husband. Chris, hi, how are things? William? Calling on behalf of Amanda. No, I haven't even seen her. Why do you think that? Do you know what she told me? Probably the same thing mine did. What did yours say? That our feelings had faded and needed a boost. So tonight she was going to a restaurant with a coworker and his friend who booked hotel rooms for them. Same here. I listened carefully, found out the details, who came up with this idea, and while she was in the shower, I packed her things. When she came out, I gave her 5 minutes to leave my apartment forever. And did she leave? She resisted, saying I didn't understand the new trends. In the end, I gave her a black eye and threw her out with her bags. Lucky you, my apartment belongs to Valerie, so I packed my things and left. What are you up to now? Going to the restaurant where their admirers made reservations. I've seen that little punk at Amanda's work, so I'll explain to him that hitting on married women is unacceptable. Where are you now? Not far. Wait for me, I'm coming too. 15 minutes later, William and Chris met outside the hotel restaurant. 5 minutes after that, they spotted Nicholas and his friend exiting the elevator. They had clearly checked in and were heading toward the restaurant, unaware they were about to be confronted. William stopped in front of Nicholas, within arm's reach. Are you Nicholas? Nicholas smirked. Yeah, that's me. Nicholas instantly received a punch to the jaw and collapsed to the floor. His friend tried to say something, but didn't get the chance. Within seconds, he was lying next to Nicholas. William and Chris slipped out unnoticed through a discreet back exit. Meanwhile, inside the restaurant, 2 groups had a heated altercation. Nicholas and his friend, unfortunately, ended up in the middle of the brawl. Just as they regained consciousness and tried to get up, they were struck again by both sides. The police arrived, and Nicholas and his friend were taken to the station for questioning. The restaurant management billed them for the broken dishes, and since the police deemed their involvement as disorderly conduct, criminal charges were filed. After the restaurant, William drove to his newly renovated house. Chris went with him. They had no idea just how much trouble Nicholas and his friend Boris were about to get into. At the same time, the police had already identified Nicholas and Boris. Officers were sent to their registered addresses to question their families. Nicholas's wife, Eleanor, was completely unaware of the situation and believed her husband was away on a business trip. She was at the home of her friend Veronica, Boris's wife, who was also under the impression that her husband was out of town for work. As fate would have it, while they were together, an officer arrived at Veronica's house. Unaware of the full story, the officer informed them, "Your husband and his friend Nicholas were at a restaurant with some women. They got into an altercation with another group, and it escalated into a mass brawl." Veronica frowned. "But my husband is supposed to be in another city. There must be some mistake. He even called me an hour ago from his trip." The officer sighed. "I don't know about that. What I do know is that both your husband Boris and Nicholas were at a restaurant and a hotel right here in the city, and they were detained at the scene. I was sent here to take a statement about your husband. I also need to visit the wife of the second detainee, Eleanor." Eleanor, who had been quietly listening, suddenly snapped to attention. "Wait, the second man, Nicholas? That's my husband. He told me he was leaving on a business trip to another city as well." The officer looked at both of them with mild concern. "Then maybe you should come with me to the station. You might want to hear from them directly." Within half an hour, Eleanor and Veronica were seated in the investigator's office, trying to make sense of what had happened. Meanwhile, William and Chris sat at a large wooden table in William's newly renovated country house. Chris looked around, impressed. "You did a great job here, man. This place is amazing. Why would you even need that apartment? You could live here year-round." William chuckled and poured them both a drink. "Yeah, it turned out well. Sit down." I've been meaning to have a drink all day, and I came prepared. And then Valerie hits me with this open marriage nonsense. Chris smirked. So what's your plan now? Honestly, I don't know. What about you? I think I'll file for divorce. She wanted an open marriage. Well, she's about to get one. Just without me in it. I'm divorcing too. I'll tell the kids tomorrow. At the same time, the investigator handling Nicholas and Boris's case instructed the duty officer to bring Valerie and Amanda to the station. Nicholas's phone, which contained messages about Valerie, had been lost, and the officers had no way of contacting them directly. A detective working on the case managed to track down the head of HR at Nicholas's company, who provided their addresses. Within 15 minutes, an officer arrived at Valerie's apartment, where he found both women drinking and clearly distressed, Amanda still nursing her visible bruise. Seeing their state, the officer suspected they had been involved in the fight at the restaurant and brought them to the station for questioning. When they arrived, they were met by Eleanor and Veronica, and what followed was a chaotic scene. The two wives of Nicholas and Boris exploded with rage, lunging at Valerie and Amanda the moment they realized who they were. In the ensuing scuffle, Valerie ended up with a black eye, while Amanda got her other eye bruised. Nicholas and Boris, still in holding cells, were completely unaware of what was happening until officers informed them that their wives had also been taken in. It was at that moment that their business trip cover story fully collapsed. As it turned out, this wasn't Nicholas's first time pulling a stunt like this. His previous employer had fired him after he was caught making advances on married women at work, which had infuriated the company's director. Now he was facing legal trouble again. During the investigation, it was confirmed that Valerie and Amanda never actually made it to the restaurant. They had been drinking at home when they were called in. The restaurant administrator testified that Nicholas and Boris had, in fact, been involved in the fight, participating with great enthusiasm. Since the other brawlers had left without paying, the restaurant billed Nicholas and Boris for the broken dishes and damages. Ultimately, the case against them was classified as disorderly conduct, and both men were sentenced to 15 days of administrative detention. Their wives, despite the brawl at the station, were not formally charged, but they were let go only after Valerie and Amanda left the premises. The moment they stepped outside, they decided to visit Veronica's house, where she had a bottle of good wine, to celebrate their inevitable divorces. Sipping wine, Veronica admitted, "You know, I've wanted to leave Boris for a long time. I was just waiting for the right reason. I'm sick of being just a housekeeper while he runs around doing whatever he wants. And now we find out he's into chasing older women? Unbelievable," Amanda nodded. "Yeah, our husbands are antiques collectors, apparently," Valerie sighed. "The investigator said they'll be locked up for 15 days. That's great." "What do you mean?" asked Amanda. "I mean, it gives me time to pack his things, clear out his bank account, and send his stuff to his mother's house. She has plenty of space for him." Amanda grinned. "I'll do the same. My parents live in a big apartment. There's enough room for him there. Let's have another drink." Meanwhile, in the holding cell, Boris turned to Nicholas. "Man, we're screwed. You lost your job over this before. Why did you do it again?" Nicholas sighed. "I thought they'd be into it. They were always whining about how their husbands didn't appreciate them. So I fed them a bunch of lies about open relationships being the new trend. And they fell for it. And those guys at the restaurant, who were they?" "I have no idea. I think I've seen one of them before. But I have no clue where those two came from. Well, whoever they were, they made sure we got our asses kicked." Early the next morning, William woke up to the sound of his phone ringing persistently. He groggily reached over and saw his daughter's name on the screen. Answering with a yawn, he said, "Hey, sweetheart, what's up?" "Dad, what the hell is going on? Mom called me crying, saying you got jealous and left, and now you're divorcing her." William sat up. "Let's clear this up. Did she tell you the whole story or just the parts that made her look good?" "She told me in general terms." "What happened?" "Did she mention these new trends for strengthening marriages?" "What new trends?" "She called it an open marriage. Have you heard of that?" "No, what's that?" "It's when a husband and wife stay married but can sleep with other people for variety." "Dad, wait, what? Are you telling me you found a mistress and came up with this idea to justify it?" William chuckled. "No, sweetheart, it's exactly the opposite. Last night, your mother told me she and Amanda had a date planned with Nicholas and his friend at a hotel restaurant. After dinner, they were going to spend the night in the hotel. His daughter was silent for a moment, then blurted out, "Is she insane? You tell me." If I ever suggested that to my husband, I'd get slapped and kicked out of the house. Well, I'm not the aggressive type, so I just packed my things and left. The apartment is hers anyway. Then who beat up Mom and Aunt Amanda? I don't know, maybe Chris did when he threw Amanda out. But after that, he was with me all night. And he's asleep in the next room right now. She said the police came and took them to the station. William frowned. I didn't know about that. I'll let you figure it out and call me back. Fine, but this open marriage thing is total nonsense. Ask her how she thinks it strengthens a marriage. I'd love to hear the answer. His daughter sighed. All right, Dad, I'll find out everything and call you back. William ended the call and realized there was no way he would be getting any more sleep. He got up and headed to the kitchen, where he found Chris already awake, watching the local news. As soon as he saw William, he smirked. You're going to love this. They just reported that there was a major brawl at that restaurant last night, and 2 people were arrested. William raised an eyebrow. Did they say who? No, just that they were employees of a local company. But tell me, who called you? My daughter, Sophia. Apparently, my wife told her that I got jealous, left, and now want a divorce. Chris burst out laughing. Of course she did. That's how they spin it. And what did you tell her? The truth. She didn't know anything about the open marriage plan, and when I explained it, she was in shock. What a mess, Chris muttered, shaking his head. And what are you planning to do now? I'm going to wait for my daughter's call. She's going over to see her mother and find out exactly what happened. What about you? I think I'll run to the store. We need more drinks. Just don't buy Hennessy, William smirked. Chris laughed, grabbed his jacket, and left. William started preparing breakfast, but was interrupted by another phone call. This time, it was his son, Alex. Hey, Dad, I was just about to call you. What's going on with Mom? William sighed. Same thing I told your sister. Your mother wanted an open marriage and planned to spend the night at a hotel with another man. What the hell, and who is this guy? Some younger coworker of hers. Did you meet him? Briefly. We didn't talk much, though. And what are you going to do? What would you do if your wife told you she was staying the night with another man because of new trends? I'd pack her stuff and throw it out. Exactly, so I packed mine and left. Wow, Sophia told me Mom said you left out of jealousy. She made it sound like you did something wrong. Yeah, I'm sure she did. Look, I appreciate your support, but I don't need anything right now. I'm with Chris, and we're handling it. All right, just don't drink too much, Alex warned. No promises, William chuckled before hanging up. Chris returned from the store carrying 3 bottles of cognac and 1.5 liters of beer. William stared at him. Are you insane? That's way too much. Chris grinned. Come on, man, it's the weekend. We're free men now. Besides, we need to take the edge off. This is how you end up an alcoholic, William joked. I had plans for today and tomorrow, but everything went to hell. Same here, Chris admitted. By the way, did your kids call you? Not yet, but I think I'll have a drink first and then call them. How about you call them first, then we drink? Fine, fine. Chris took out his phone, saw a bunch of missed calls from his wife and kids, and sighed. Looks like they already know what happened, probably from Amanda. He called his sons and had a brief conversation. When he hung up, he looked at William and said, My older son wants to beat the crap out of Nicholas. Not surprising, William smirked. Yeah, I had to talk him down. My younger son also wanted a piece of him. Took some convincing to keep them both from doing something stupid. Well, if 2 trained boxers get their hands on Nicholas, he won't be walking away. Exactly, Chris said, pouring himself a drink. So, how are we spending the weekend? Drinking, eating, and figuring out our next steps. Meanwhile, Valerie and Amanda woke up early and spent the morning trying to cover their bruises with makeup. As they stood in front of the mirror, Amanda suddenly froze. Val, what if their wives come to our office? What if they make a scene? Valerie sighed. Let's just tell security not to let anyone in. We don't deal with clients directly anyway. And Nicholas? What if his wife shows up? Let him handle his own problems. They arrived at work, but Nicholas was nowhere to be seen. Around 11 a.m., the HR manager walked in and asked, "Where's Nicholas?" Valerie shrugged. "No idea. Maybe he's running late." The HR manager left but returned 40 minutes later, this time with a serious expression. "Do you two want to tell me what happened on Friday?" Valerie and Amanda exchanged nervous glances. "What do you mean?" Valerie asked. "I mean that Nicholas has been sentenced to 15 days in detention. His wife called to inform us. Apparently, she thought he was on a business trip, but instead he was in a hotel restaurant with two older women and got into a fight." Amanda gulped. "So, what happens to him now?" "He won't be fired. Legally, administrative detention is considered an excused absence. However, since he can't perform his duties, he won't be paid for these days. Also, I doubt the director will want to keep him after this." "So he'll probably quit?" Valerie asked. "Most likely. His wife also mentioned she's kicking him out of their home." Valerie and Amanda stayed silent. "Are you sure you don't have anything to add?" the HR manager pressed. "No, we don't know much. We never made it to the restaurant. We only found out what happened later when the police took us in." "And how did the police get involved with you?" "Well, when we arrived at the station, Nicholas's wife and his friend's wife were there too. And they weren't happy to see us." "What do you mean?" "They attacked us," Amanda admitted, touching her bruised cheek. The HR manager shook her head in disbelief. "And what did your husband say?" "When we told them about the open marriage idea, they left us." The HR manager sighed. "Valerie, Amanda, are you serious? Nicholas has been feeding you this nonsense for months and you actually believed him? Open marriage is just a fantasy for womanizers who want to cheat without consequences. I don't even know how to help you now." Meanwhile, William and Chris met with a lawyer to begin the divorce process. As they sat in the waiting area, they noticed two women entering, Eleanor and Veronica. The four of them exchanged glances before realizing they had all been affected by the same people. Eleanor crossed her arms. "Let me guess. You're here because of Valerie and Amanda?" "Yep," William said. "And you?" "Because of Nicholas and Boris," Veronica said. When they entered the lawyer's office, they explained their cases. The lawyer listened carefully, discussed payment, and scheduled another meeting at the courthouse the next day to officially file their divorce petitions. In court, Nicholas did not appear for the first hearing, and the judge rescheduled the case, sending him another summons. When he failed to appear again, the judge proceeded without him, ruling in Eleanor's favor and granting the divorce. Shortly after Veronica's case was heard, Boris, who had initially resisted, tried blaming everything on Nicholas and claiming he never met the women, but Veronica stood firm. The judge ultimately granted her the divorce as well. Over the following weeks, William and Chris avoided any contact with their wives. Valerie and Amanda, realizing they were getting nowhere, tried to use their children to talk to them. Up until then, the kids had stayed out of it, assuming their parents were adults who could handle their own problems. But now Valerie and Amanda insisted that there was no actual infidelity, that they never planned to sleep with anyone, just have dinner and dance. One evening, William's daughter, Sophia, called and invited him to her birthday party. "Dad, I want you to come. Mom will be there too, but please just talk things out like adults." "Sophia, I don't want to ruin your birthday with a fight." "Then don't fight. Just talk." William hesitated but finally agreed. On the day of the party, he and Chris arrived, both wary of seeing their ex-wives. To their surprise, they spent the evening being civil, even dancing with their former spouses. But when the night was over, William and Chris quietly slipped away without saying goodbye, taking a taxi to William's house to spend the weekend drinking and reflecting on their futures. As the weekend passed, William and Chris discussed their next steps. Chris was determined to finalize his divorce and possibly allow Amanda to live with him, but in separate rooms, making it clear that their relationship had fundamentally changed. "I just can't trust her anymore," he admitted. "It's like she lost her fear of consequences and thought she could do whatever she wanted." William nodded. "I've been thinking about Valerie too. I keep analyzing our life together, and while I never suspected anything before, I can't shake the feeling that maybe she's done this before and just didn't get caught." Chris sighed. Yeah, I know what you mean. We trusted them completely, and now it's like a switch flipped. I don't even recognize her anymore. Finally, the day of their divorce hearings arrived. First was William and Valerie's case. Valerie's lawyer attempted to delay the process by bringing up property division, but Valerie unexpectedly intervened. No, don't do that. I'm at fault for what happened. I accept his terms. The judge quickly ruled in William's favor, setting a final waiting period before the divorce was officially recognized. Next was Chris and Amanda's case, which ended in the same way. As they all left the courtroom, Amanda attempted to congratulate them sarcastically. Well, you're both free now. Chris frowned. Amanda, don't make jokes. We did this to ourselves. Valerie turned to William. Please forgive me. William looked at her for a long moment. We're free, but the judge said the divorce won't be final for 30 more days. Until then, we still have time to think. Chris exhaled. All right, since the decision is made, let's go to a cafe and mark the occasion. Valerie and Amanda exchanged glances and hesitated, but eventually agreed. They all walked toward the nearest cafe, which ironically was the same hotel restaurant where everything had started. 3 years passed. William and Valerie continued living together in her apartment, but their relationship remained strained. One evening, she finally addressed it. You never look at me the way you used to. We live together, but you barely acknowledge me. Aren't you afraid I'll find someone else? William smirked. If you do, you won't have to worry about divorcing me. I'll just pack my things and leave. But this time, it will be for good. She didn't argue. Meanwhile, Chris and Amanda also continued living together, though Amanda never dared to ask what Chris would do if she ever betrayed him again. She already knew the answer. As for Nicholas's ex-wife, Eleanor, she spent some time alone after her divorce. At her friend Veronica's wedding, she met a successful business owner who had been celebrating his own birthday at the restaurant next door. They started dating, and before long, he proposed. Veronica, on the other hand, had wasted no time after divorcing Boris. She quickly grew close to a co-worker who had admired her for years. The moment her divorce was finalized, he asked her to marry him. Boris tried to interfere, but she firmly shut him down, making it clear that his chances with her were over for good. And Nicholas? After serving his 15-day sentence, he returned to work, but the atmosphere had changed. He walked into the HR office, handed over a medical certificate for his absence, and immediately wrote his resignation letter. Before leaving, he went to his department, insulted Valerie and Amanda, gathered his things, and walked out for the last time. That same evening, he left the city and moved back in with his parents, disappearing from their lives completely. For William and Chris, life slowly returned to normal. They had adjusted to their new reality, knowing one thing for sure: some mistakes could never be undone, and some betrayals could never be forgiven.